Coming up on Windows Weekly, it is my last time to sit down with Paul Thurrott and Mary Jo Foley, for a while at least, and they explain everything that's coming with the new versions of Windows 10, as well as some changes to the Windows 10 app platform. They both got to try the HoloLens 2, and I had a lot of questions other than just, balancing your checkbook in AR. Plus, so much more. Stay tuned. And of course, don't forget that beer pick.
Podcasts you love.
From people you trust.
This is Twit.
This is Windows Weekly, episode 647, recorded November 13th, 2019. Dark mode, schmark mode. This episode of Windows Weekly is brought to you by IT Pro TV. IT Pro TV provides IT training that's effective and entertaining with access to virtual labs and practice tests. Visit go.itpro.tv/windows for an additional 30% off for the lifetime of your active subscription. You just use the code WW30 at checkout. And by Microsoft Mechanics, the official show from Microsoft for tech enthusiasts, IT pros, and software architects. Get deep dives from the engineers behind the tech, or just learn the essentials of the latest from Microsoft. Visit aka.ms/WWMechanics to watch and subscribe today. And by Wasabi Hot Cloud Storage. Thinking about moving your data storage to the cloud? Well, Wasabi is enterprise-class cloud storage at 1/5 the price of Amazon S3 and up to 6 times faster with no hidden fees for egress or API requests. Calculate your savings and try Wasabi with free unlimited storage for a month at wasabi.com, code Windows. Welcome back to Windows Weekly. It is the last week where I'm trying to find all those W's, will be with you for a while. This, of course, is a weekly look at all things Microsoft, including Windows, Office, Xbox, and so much more every week from two of the foremost Windows watchers in the world. We, of course, have Paul Thurrott of Thurrott.com. Hello, Paul.
Hello, you.
Hello, you. And Mary Jo Foley of All About Microsoft. Hello, you.
Hello.
You. Welcome back again to this week's episode. And I have to say, I'm a little saddened that I'll be giving up my seat for Leo's return.
Memories.
But I will hold these times fondly in my heart and on Elvis as well.
Is Leo actually back in California now? Did he return?
He, I think, doesn't get back until transit? Yeah, he's in transit. And you know what? If I was him, I would say, "Oh man, I just really need to add 3 or 4 more days to the vacation." Exactly. Absolutely, there's I'm sure quite the jet lag involved. So I don't think we'll be seeing him until next week. But Elisa, I could definitely see if she got off of the airplane and came right here. Definitely, I could see that. There she is, right there. Hi, Lisa. No, not yet. So let's. Yeah. Okay, I'm going. Yeah. Okay. Yeah, you're right. I'm sorry. I'm gone. No, let's get rolling here. In fact, speaking of rolling, Windows 10 version 1909 has rolled out. Did you like that?
Nice transition.
Thank you. Vanadium? What does that mean?
Vanadium. Yeah. So, we get to tell you about weird things in the Windows world, right? For one more week. So the way Microsoft codenames Windows feature releases now is they're using the same system that Azure uses. And what they do is they take their codenames from the periodic table of elements.
Aha.
This one, known as 1909. Some people call it 19H2. Some people call it the November update. The real code name is Vanadium of this release. And it started rolling out to mainstream users yesterday.
Okay. And I do want to, we might as well do a little Vanadium. Its atomic number is 23. It's a hard silvery gray metal. And it's rarely found in nature. So
it's actually the material that Captain America's shield is made out of.
Oh, you just got so many people so mad.
I know. No, Paul. In episode 13, in issue 13 of Captain America, it was revealed that Just kidding, guys.
Oh,
Relax.
dear. It was a joke. It was a joke. It's okay.
It's a joke. Captain America's fake.
Do you hear
I hate
how
to
my
break it
voice
to
has
you.
changed? That's how it sounds when I'm nervous. Vanadium. So is there any, do we know, just speaking specifically from like the nerd point of view of, I think code names are fun. Is there any tie between the code name and what is actually introduced in the product? Or is it just like,
No, not in this.
No.
case.
okay,
No.
I do have to, one quick
But-
note here before you go
Yeah.
on. Karsten did have to burst through the door to let us know about vibranium, which
Exactly.
He
I was gonna
literally
tell you
burst
about-
through the door.
Right.
I was pretty sure he
So-
was going to burst through to tell us what was,
I know.
Captain America's shield was actually made out of.
It's vibranium, folks.
Oh boy. Anyway,
And that's the next release after this, because if you
Mm-hmm.
look at the periodic table of elements, Chromium is really the release after Vanadium. But what if Microsoft called something Windows 10 Chromium? Do you see how
oh, that's
confusing that would be?
confusing.
So they
Yep.
dumped the Chromium one, and they're going to call it Vibranium.
Careful, Mary Jo. You're
I know, I was
triggering
being very
blog
careful.
headlines that say Microsoft kills
Oh, I
Chromium.
know. No, or Mary Jo Floyd doesn't know who Captain America is. True.
Wait, so the next one is actually vibranium?
Yes.
Oh man.
Oh, that's not a joke?
No, that's not a
No.
joke. So after Vanadium, it's Vibranium, because it was going to be Chromium, but instead, to keep confusion at bay, supposedly, they went with Vibranium.
Now they're not
Not
doing
making that
some partnership like Google did with KitKat, are they? There's no Marvel partnership happening
No.
here. You know what I
No,
should have
it's
said
not as
just
far as we
then?
know.
I should have said there's no DC partnership, is there? That would have really got some people upset.
Oh,
Captain
would've.
America is Marvel, not DC.
I'm of a dark horse kind of a guy, but
Yeah.
Yeah.
I know. It's hard to be us.
It is hard to
Just
be
code
you.
names.
Now, this is a release that's available for me, right? This is everyday users. I don't have to be on some ring.
well, right. And actually,
No.
the interesting thing about this is Microsoft has a storied past now with trying to ship these Windows 10 feature updates. They've had lots of problems, and last year in particular, they had huge problems with both of the releases that they shipped that year. Last year, I guess. The last year, and actually the first one this year, if I'm not mistaken. So anyway, it's been bad. So 1909 is not really a feature update, right? It's actually a very small cumulative update. It's not delivered in the same fashion as a true feature update. It doesn't have as much of an impact on your system. It's much faster to install. So this will be, I mean, if they hadn't called this out as a feature update, you wouldn't have even noticed it. It takes 5 minutes to install. It adds 2 or 3 minor new features. It's incredibly non-obtrusive.
Can't call it a
and
service pack, but it kind of is.
can't call it anything. I mean, they're calling it a feature update. It really isn't. I mean, it updates the the version, I guess. So the build, obviously the build number, but also the version. And when they service it going forward, they actually service 1903 and 1909 with the same cumulative updates, which is everything you need to know about it, right? They've never done that before. This required different updates for each version of the OS. It's really the same version as before.
With some
but that's
very,
good.
very minor
That means
features,
it just doesn't get in the way.
Yeah.
So
Yeah.
what?
Now you're wondering why do it?
Yeah. You can see
I can
that.
see
you
the
see that?
confusion.
Yeah. I'm just going, what's
so
the
Microsoft
point?
has committed to delivering 2 major, what they call feature updates a year.
Oh,
It is, that sounds arbitrary because, it is.
in this case,
But
yeah.
actually, there are enterprise servicing agreements that are attached to that. So the second update that comes out each year, the one that comes out in the latter half of the year, is supported for a longer period of time. So actually, the way that they did this, you ship a major update in the spring, you fine tune it over the next 6 months, you release a new version. It's really just kind of a bug fixed version of the original, but it has one or two features. Actually, I should say there's a handful of features for consumers. There's a handful of new features for businesses as well. It's a really good system. It makes more sense than what they were doing in the past.
Okay.
Even though it sounds confusing, but it is better than what they've done in the past. The problem is we don't know if they're going to keep doing it.
Right.
Now that's interesting. So they may stop doing.
They may go back to the way it was before. Yeah.
And that would be
Which is-
because the agreements that they had at the enterprise are
No,
ending.
it's because they're terrible and they don't understand how awful that system is, and I don't know why
So-
this isn't patently obvious, but
Oh, wait. Let me interject here. So
yeah, because
they
you
know
hate
how-
consumers, so this is a good
I
point
hate
for you.
consumers.
Yeah.
Let me weigh in.
Right. Yeah.
No, so they do know how horrible the system is because they hear it from IT pros all the time who complain about 2 large feature updates per year and they feel like they can't keep up. So they do know this is a problem. So some people, including us when we were optimistic, thought, okay, they heard feedback and now they're going to do a major update in the spring and a minor update in the fall, and that's going to be the new normal. They never said that, though. They just said, this is how we're doing it this time. So at Ignite, I was kind of going around and asking people, do you think this is the new normal? You know, what do you think is going to happen
When you say people,
next
do you mean
year's?
people from Microsoft?
People, people.
People. Yeah.
I don't want to
A
reveal
woman on the
who I
street,
am.
Mary Jo Foley, is doing interviews with whoever walks by. What do you think about the servicing model for Windows 10?
Oh my
Hey, I
God,
don't
can we
have
do
nothing to
that?
with this. No,
Foley
no,
on the
I tried
street.
to ask people- I have tried to
Just
ask people
hitting her
who
with the
might know.
newspaper as they walk away. Yeah.
No, so the people I talk to who I'd rather not qualify further to present
Sources
their-
close to the matter.
Yes.
Okay, sources close,
they
physically
were-
close to Ignite.
Yes, they were hinting to me that this is probably not the new normal, and that they think Microsoft will go back to 2 regular feature updates per year in 2020. And the reason they say this is the case is this year, with the 19H2 and even the 19H1 updates, this was kind of a weird year for bringing together the Azure and the Windows teams, right? The engineering teams were combined. They were trying to get everybody on the same schedule, and Azure was not on the schedule that Windows was. And they actually missed a cycle in the middle for Windows, like something that Windows should have had completed by such and such a date for the Azure team. They couldn't make it. And so they just skipped it. And I think that's why the 19H2 update is what it is, minor. And instead, what they ended up testing more with that update instead of features was the servicing model, like how you actually can do an update when you don't change, when you change some things in the core. In the core. I think that's what's going on. I think.
Can I just express a remaining hope that I have that
Of course,
this
we love
is going
when
to
you
go
express
over.
hope.
Yeah. It doesn't happen that much, so please give me a second.
Right.
But it not you. I mean, it's just unusual for me to do this, but I really hope that this is such a positive experience for everybody that Microsoft reconsiders.
Me too.
Because what I've seen is, what I just described was there are people on Twitter who are saying, my God, this was such an innocuous update. It was wonderful. The computer had to reboot, but it was 5 minutes start to end. That's not how feature updates go. And right, I think Windows 10 is mature enough now that they don't need to do these 2 major updates. I don't think it was they ever needed to do it, but I really hope that this goes over so well because they have lots of data. They know that the last, I'm going to say 3 versions of Windows 10 didn't go out the door very well at all. And then they did this, and this is going to go really well. And that should cause some people to think a little bit about that because it's clearly a better system than what they were doing before. And when you tie it to the servicing model, like I was saying earlier, it makes it make even more sense. If you have a lot of features to throw out, put them in the spring update, give it 6 more months to kind of percolate or whatever, marinate, whatever you want to describe it, and then support that thing for a long time. It's the right. It's just the right approach.
So, I think it would be the total right approach, especially because the fall update is supported longer. It's supported 30 months instead of 18 months, and IT pros would feel way more confident deploying that, knowing there weren't a lot of new things added. They'd feel like they had this extra 6 to 8 months of testing done on top of what already existed. It would be positive for everyone, but I hope they listen. I agree with Paul. I hope they listen.
Here's the other problem, by the way, just kind of tied to this. So this year they did something completely different. Next year, by the way, they are going to do something completely different too, regardless of what happens with the second update. 20H1, the version of Windows that will ship in the first half of 2020, will have been tested for a year. They have never done that with any version of Windows 10. Well, except for maybe the first version, I guess.
Yeah.
So what that means is all of a sudden we're going to have this major update. Allegedly, we haven't seen any new, major new features, but a major update, an actual feature update that will have been tested for a really long period of time. So what does that say for 20H2? I mean, if you make
Right.
that a major update too, that thing's only going to be tested for 6 months.
Yeah,
Why would you go back
Yep.
to that?
I know.
I like this system. I really think it makes sense. And it makes sense even with we're going to test this other release 2 versions out for a year. They could do that every year and it would make sense.
And does this go back to the conversation that we had, I think maybe even the first time that I guest hosted, where essentially a big issue with these updates ends up being if you're adding in a crud ton of new features, that adds so much work for the folks who at the IT level are trying to support this, that you have, you're trying to roll out these things for a company and then suddenly all these features get added that then people are asking about and trying to figure out. So is the idea here that, but does it make, and I'm asking you, if you get one feature or one update that has a crud ton of features built into it, versus a slow rollout across the whole thing, why is it better to have them all come at once as opposed to, we'll just add in a few every once in a while?
I don't actually think it has much to do with the new features. One of the things that anyone could do, I guess, assuming you could find the bits, would be to go back to some older version of Windows 10, the original version, some version from 3 years ago, whatever it is, and you compare it to what we have today. Honestly, they're not that different, right? The problem is the way that these updates are delivered. A feature update is literally delivered because it is a major new version of Windows. It's the install routine wipes out your hard drive, pushes your data to the side, installs a new version of Windows, and then applies stuff back. There's a big chance for something to go really horribly wrong there. The thing that this 1909 thing, which is not really that thing, it's really just a cumulative update. And like I said, a small cumulative update. It's not even a major one by CU standards. You have to reboot, but it's just making a couple of minor changes. It's not shifting the whole OS off and then on again. And so it really has more to do with that, to my mind. If they could change the way that Windows 10 is updated, right, through some kind of further modularization where you don't have to wipe out the whole OS to get new features or whatever, that would be fine. But the way they do things today, it's not like that. So for the first 4 years-ish of Windows 10's life cycle, we were installing major new versions of Windows every 6 months, whereas with previous versions of Windows, we were doing it every 3 to 6 years. That's a huge change.
Yeah.
And by the way, they didn't go well. You don't have to accept this as my opinion. We know that 1903, 1809, 1803, all of those things were disasters in their own way, right? All of them had major problems. So we'll see what happens here. Have there been problems with CUs? Yeah, probably. But they are almost certainly not as big of an issue as when you have a problem with a feature update.
That makes sense.
It's just a reliability thing. It's just
a trust thing, right? And like for IT pros, I feel like it's a trust thing because they want to be able to say, I feel really good about applying this update across my company. I should. Hopefully, they're testing it too before they do that, but they want more confidence in this. I mean, they don't want to roll something out and then have all these problems crop up and then have to roll it back or have all their users coming to them saying, "So you said this was going to work." It didn't.
That's what's cool about this one. I feel like for most, look, every business has their own kind of schedule for installing whatever kinds of updates, et cetera. There are probably many businesses that might wait a month or more to see what happens with particular cumulative updates, whatever it is. This system works. It just works. Feature updates, we have businesses that most enterprises probably were 1, 2, 3 versions of Windows away from whatever was newest in the past. They can't do that anymore. So they're kind of pushing it as long as they can with Windows 10. And I guess it depends on what kind of support, agreement you have with Microsoft, whatever. But I think this makes sense for everybody. It's everybody.
Yeah. I can compare it.
Microsoft.
Well, yeah, except for Microsoft. Apparently, they think it doesn't make sense. I will compare it to my experience on Mac OS for some time where everybody that I know, and it's, of course, a particular subset of people, everybody that I know that pays attention to the latest update of Mac OS and what features that brings, we all end up holding off forever and ever and ever and ever and ever before we update because it introduces so many new problems. And when there's trust, which is something that has not, sort of been given there, then you want to hold off on updating. And so to have this go through and the computer restarts and everything's working as you expected it to, and there aren't compatibility
you shouldn't
issues,
have to hold your breath.
Yeah, that's a great thing. And
so it's interesting. I don't know as much about Mac OS and what the upgrade rate is like. Microsoft or Apple rather talks a lot about how many people have updated to iOS whatever, within so many weeks. So 50% in the first 2 weeks or whatever. It's always like a big thing. They never really talk about that with Mac OS, which is interesting. Mac OS is a lot more like Windows in that it's a mature legacy desktop operating system. There's not a lot of excitement about new features there for the most part, I would imagine, right? So dark mode must have been pretty cool. And what else? It's kind of it, right? It's like,
as of the latest one, that is exactly it was dark mode and what
that's the type of thing you should expect of a system. In this case, that's almost 20 years old. Windows is 30, whatever it is, 30, 50, whatever years old. It's huge, but we're not expecting shiny fireworks and whatever. I mean, I expect it to come up. I expect it to work. I expect everything I do to work the same. I mean, you tend to notice the problems, not the new features,
Ooh, yeah, that's a good way to put it. Yeah. Because you just want to get your work done. And some of us,
God forbid,
some of us don't even see the Chrome or anything like that. We just see the text. And by some of us, I mean Mary Jo.
I do. Yeah.
Yes.
Dark mode, who's heard of it?
Sure.
Dark mode, schmark mode.
Make sure you get that little translucency. That's what I'm going to do to my Notepad clone, Mary Jo. I'm going to make the text be translucent.
Or you can make dark mode the default.
Oh, I can make it in dark mode too.
Ooh.
When I do that.
Somebody asked me on Twitter, am I going to do a non-reviewer's review of your Notepad clone?
Right. Yeah, maybe.
Maybe even just as a troll. Like,
exactly.
Yeah. So let's talk about this, Paul. You've got, I don't think I missed anything there with Windows 10. Is there anything else with that you wanted to talk about before we talk about Windows 10 app platform?
Maybe the server.
Okay, yeah.
So, because Microsoft also did talk about the new version server 1909 yesterday in their blog post. They actually talked about it in two different blog posts and gave kind of conflicting information about it.
Oh, good.
I know. Yeah. So one blog said 1909 will be available from Azure Marketplace or the Volume Licensing Service Center in the coming weeks. Then we have another blog post that said, by the way, Windows Server 19. Let's see, how do they phrase this? Refreshed update media will be made available for updating to Windows Server 1909. But they were talking about here an enablement package and how they will not make Windows Server available through WSUS or the Microsoft Update Catalog. So it's a little bit confusing how exactly and when exactly people are going to get Windows Server. But there is a Windows Server 1909, and it's, I think, even more of a minor update to 1909 than the client is. So
I wonder if that's tied to something. Somebody asked me today, they had gone to the Windows 10 download center expecting to get 1909, and they got 1903. Yeah, and my response to that was, well, I assume they're going to release 1909, but actually, we talk about one of the nice things about Windows 10. One of the nice things about the update model they have with cumulative updates is that, you buy your laptop, like Mary Jo's laptop. Let's pretend it was manufactured in July. It was probably much more recent than that, but it doesn't matter. So 4 or 5 months have gone by. She buys it. She plugs it in, connects it to the internet. When she turns it on for the first time and goes to check for updates, basically, you're only going to have a handful of updates. You're going to have like the monthly cumulative update, which is, again, cumulative from all the months that have come before. You don't have to download this massive set of updates. You might have a few other things, but there could be driver updates, whatever. But by and large, what you get is something pretty small. So because 1909 is a cumulative update, you can make the argument that you buy the laptop, again, it's still 6 months later, whatever it is, you're always going to have it's going to be 1903. Like that's the version you actually get, because 1909 is just a cumulative update. It's just another one of those small updates.
Oh, I see.
So maybe. I can tell you no on that.
Okay,
for sure. Because I
was trying
asked
to rationalize
about that. I know. Anything that makes sense, you know, the answer is probably no. Right? So,
Let me write that down. That's a good note. Okay.
So even though right
Years of
now
experience.
people are saying the version is showing as 1903, and maybe that I would assume that's going to change at some point to 1909. And the reason it has to change is because technically Microsoft is calling this a feature pack, and the reason that naming is important is because of how long they will support it. Right. So if they don't call it a feature pack, it won't be on the 30-month support schedule because,
there you go.
yeah, see what I mean? So because cumulative updates are supported for a different amount of time than the full feature releases are, I believe. So they are going to call this a feature release. It's going to be, you know, on their lifecycle page as a typical feature release, even though it's more like a cumulative update, and it'll be serviced and supported the same amount of time as a regular feature release.
Okay. Well,
yeah, just when you thought it made sense.
Yeah, but we know now.
I guess one more quick thing just about 1909. Every time Microsoft does release a new version of Windows 10, they have 2 support pages that list the features that they've deprecated and then removed in this version. This version is incredibly minor in that regard. Mary Jo, I don't know if you remember this. I actually didn't remember that this was a fact, but apparently Microsoft deprecated Windows to Go in 1903. That's not a thing anymore. It's gone.
Oh, really? Huh.
Yeah.
Did anyone even use
remember that.
What is Windows to Go?
So it was a way to install Windows onto a USB key so that you could plug it into any computer and just use it off the key. So you'd always have your personalized little experience. So if you were like a contract worker or whatever, you could sit down anywhere on a laptop or computer and you wouldn't touch anything that was on the computer because everything you had was inside of that little thing.
Okay, see, that sounds like a really good idea. Why did no one use that?
I don't know.
Or did people, there was just a small subset of people that used it maybe.
It was super specialized. Like you had to have it didn't work with any USB key. You had to have a special kind of USB key. That was one issue. And I think it had something to do with encryption or whatever, but it had to be USB 3, which, you know, today is not a problem. I don't remember. I don't
either.
I don't know.
I remember when it came out, everybody was like, "Oh, that's going to be amazing, and this is going to be fantastic." And then I don't remember talking to anybody who used it.
Nope, it was really hard to use, really hard to set up, and anyway, I don't recall that going away, but it's gone. So that happened in the previous version, but this version, nothing major.
Well, maybe it's not a bummer. It seems like a bummer hearing about the feature. That sounds like a kind of cool thing, but apparently there was a reason they got rid of it.
There's all this stuff. There was the people, remember the My People thing they added a few 10.3 whatever versions ago, dead. You know, there's all kinds of stuff like that.
Yeah.
But that stuff all got killed or deprecated, I should say, last time. This time there was nothing I could actually I should probably just look at it and make sure there's nothing, but I didn't see anything major on the list.
All right. Well, while Paul's looking that up, we're going to take a quick break. We'll be back with lots more here. But I want to tell you that this episode of Windows Weekly is brought to you by IT Pro TV. You can enjoy learning with IT Pro TV's edutainers who blend education and entertainment to make learning IT engaging and fun in an interactive talk show format. If you're a listener and watcher of this, then you're probably already into that kind of thing. It's a big month for Microsoft announcements, and you can use IT Pro TV to get the certs you need to become a Microsoft professional. IT Pro TV has more than 800 hours of Microsoft training, including Microsoft Azure, which by the number of times we've said Azure in probably every single episode of Windows Weekly, you can tell that would be a great thing to learn there. IT Pro TV is so versatile, they can help you and your team get certified IT training in all sectors, including government, managed services, healthcare, education, tech, finance, and so much more. They are the official video training partner for CompTIA and have 12 CompTIA on-demand courses, including CompTIA A+, Network Plus, and Security Plus certs. You can become part of IT Pro TV's family with either a standard membership, which is video only, or you can step up to that premium membership that has video plus labs and practice tests. So you can really dig in and not only get to see these videos, but follow along and work in those work on those tests and labs. So you definitely know that you've got the experience that you're going after. Don't wait. You can visit go.itpro.tv/windows and use the code WW30, and that's going to get you 30 30% off. That is a big discount. That's go.itpro.tv/windows with the code WW30 for an additional 30% off for the lifetime of your active subscription. Yeah, IT Pro TV. Build or expand your IT career and enjoy the journey. Thanks so much to IT Pro TV for sponsoring this week's episode of Windows Weekly and for making our Windows watchers out there smarter and better equipped to handle Azure and everything in between. All those updates we just got at Ignite, all those things that were announced. We appreciate it. All right. Did you find what you were looking for, Paul?
Yeah, there was nothing there.
Oh, okay. Well,
also, while you were speaking, like 2 major news items occurred, but we'll get to this.
Breaking news that we will get to soon. They got a little tease there. But first, let's talk about the Windows 10 app platform. There were some worries, right? That the developers were not going to be able to. You laugh. Explain to us what's going on.
Yeah. Well, as the person that took the brunt of the truck, I will say that back in May, when Microsoft had its developer conference Build, there was a bit of confusion over the future of the apps platform on Windows 10 because we were told privately that the native Windows 10 app platform, which is called UWP for Universal Windows Platform, was dead. I got in trouble for reporting that. I mean, a lot of people, I guess on Twitter especially, I mean, sort of felt like I made it up or something, but that's not the fact, as Mary Jo knows. But I'll just say that it's been a summer of controversy and a summer of, or half year of wondering when Microsoft was going to kind of come clean on what's going on. And so
a summer of discontent.
Yeah, there you go. That's a good phrase. Someone should use that. Huh. It was the best of times. It was the worst of times. I'm also reminded of a Bangles song for some. Anyway, the point is, at Ignite, the bunch of developer content at the show. It was actually developer heavy. It was pretty nice, and there was a great session on the future of the app platform. So they talked about that a lot. And the basic gist of it is that Microsoft made a lot of mistakes when they shipped Windows 10. They did things like bundle Edge as part of the operating system, didn't make it available to previous versions of Windows. And so it really constrained the adoption of this system. Plus, they were always behind because they could only ship a new version every 6 months. And so, they fixed that. And one of the other big mistakes they made was they made UWP specific to Windows 10 only. They didn't bring it to previous versions of Windows. And they only put new features or support for new features for developers basically into UWP. Actually, they also put them into the old Win32 API, but let's just say for modern frameworks, basically on the UWP. The reason that's a problem is that, it's a lot of it should be obvious, but one of the reasons is that there are a lot of developers who are still targeting platforms frameworks that debuted a long time ago or previously in previous versions of Windows, like Windows Forms, Windows Presentation Foundation, and so forth. So one of the things Microsoft has been working on is bringing those things back from the dead, fully supporting them again, and then stripping stuff out of UWP and delivering it separately so that they can bring features that were previously specific to UWP to these other frameworks. And so that's basically the discussion. And so if you are like I wrote the Notepad clone that we're talking about, I wrote with Windows Forms, which is something that dates back literally to 2002 in the first version of the .NET framework. Or if you write for WPF, which debuted in Windows Vista, originally Longhorn, which was like Avalon, you'll be able to take advantage of these new platform features in Windows 10. You don't have to switch. You don't have to switch to UWP, which is great because especially WinForms, but partially I would say also WPF, are more desktop oriented than UWP. UWP is a mobile app platform, right? It's the extension of what they started Windows 8. It's the Store app platform. It's modern in many ways. Like architecturally, there's a lot of modern features, but it's also designed for these big touch points. It's not for like clicking little icons with a mouse. It's for clicking things with your hamburger fingers. So
right.
Yeah. So at least for me, I'm really ham-handed, I guess. So that's cool. So anyway, I appreciate the clarity there. As far as the UWP is dead thing, I mean, it's a little more nuanced than it was described at Build, but I think of it more as the strategy is what's dead, right? So originally when Windows 10 shipped, the strategy was the future is UWP, and if you want to get on this train, you need to adopt UWP. And now what Microsoft is saying is what they should have been saying all along is wherever you are, we will bring those features to you. And there's a lot that goes into it. There's the WinUI layer that's being stripped out of essentially the user experience layer is being delivered separately, and then some other stuff as well. But we'll see how this goes for me personally. But like the Notepad thing is kind of, I was joking about, I'm going to add translucency effects to the Notepad clone. That's something I could do because translucency effects are part of UWP, and I could do it right now actually, but I could in fact use it's called XAML Islands or the Microsoft Community, whatever it's called, the Windows Community Toolkit or whatever, to access UWP features in a WinForms app, which is pretty cool. It's a way to modernize your existing code base.
So I remember we talked a little bit about WinUI last week, and it serves sort of as the umbrella that exists above Win32 and UWP that then dives down into all of the different platforms. My question, so I guess I'm confused. If you've got Win32 and UWP, and they're not necessarily only focusing on UWP, what else exists in that space besides UWP and Win32?
So Win32 is the base of all of this, right? So this is the original application platform. It's flat C. It was C, now C++ based. It's not hierarchical. It's not object oriented in any way. It's ugly. It's hard. It's terrible. And so obviously, well, it is. It's antiquated. It was antiquated when it was new. It's terrible. But they put things on top of it over the years. Visual Basic is something that runs on top, or did run on top of it, right? .NET is something that runs on top of it. .NET is a beautiful set of APIs. It's organized and hierarchical. It's object oriented. It's elegant. And they have these frameworks that go on top of .NET. There are like user interface frameworks like Windows Forms, again, from 2002, or WPF from 2006, I guess. The original Metro platform for Windows 8 is, it's all built, however you want to organize it. It's all built on top of Win32 somehow, and .NET somehow. And that evolved into UWP. So UWP has all these platform features that are specific to Windows 10. It has its own user interface controls. And this has a bunch of stuff. And to date, that stuff has only been available to you if you write to UWP. So if you wrote a legacy application of any kind and you wanted to go to Windows 10 and use these native features, if you didn't write it in Win32, which most people probably didn't, your only course of action was to start over from scratch and write a UWP app. And then what you would run into is actually UWP doesn't have a lot of that classic desktop stuff in it. It's a modern kind of mobile app framework. So now they're bridging the gap.
That's troublesome. That was originally troublesome. I'm glad that the gap is being bridged.
It's kind of hard to explain. But it's big. It's actually really big. And it's like, Apple just fixed the keyboard on the Mac. Are we going to applaud them for it? It's like, sort of. I mean, like, it's what they should have done from the beginning.
Right.
So it's still good news, right? Like, I'm glad they're doing it now. I wish they had done it all along.
Yeah. I think that when I talked to Kevin Gallo at Build, he basically said, we made a wrong move when we created this schism, and we're trying to fix it. That's why we're going to call everything Windows apps instead of UWP or Store apps and Win32 apps. Yeah,
because it shouldn't matter what you use.
Right.
I think they should call it all Cortana apps, but that's just me.
Oh, no.
He said, oh, no.
By the way, just a random historical aside. I think I mentioned this, Mary Jo, on the side the other day. I discovered in the course of researching things that I had forgotten this, but when Microsoft was coming out with what was then called Longhorn, and remember they had like the Windows Communication Foundation, they had the Windows Presentation Foundation, they had other stuff. I don't remember everything, but that stuff originally was going to be only for Longhorn. And developers revolted, they complained, and Microsoft brought it all to previous versions of Windows XP, essentially. Actually, I think the earliest versions of .NET, probably you could download them on Windows 9X and Windows 2000 as well. I don't really remember, but the big dust up at the time was they were going to do what they did later with Windows 10, and they were going to make the new stuff only available on the new platform, and everyone complained. And so that stuff came out as .NET Framework probably 3. Maybe it doesn't matter what the version number was, but they eventually decided to bring it to everybody. So they're doing it again, but now they're doing it belatedly, unfortunately, like after it, years, literally like 5 years later, but at least they're doing it.
There you go. And you know what? You're here to experience it, so that's great.
Exactly.
I feel like I really just blurted that out in a horrible way. I hope people understand what I was trying to say. I hope I didn't make too many mistakes, but I think that's fairly accurate.
All right. Well, I guess you'll find out whenever you have another summer
I'll
of
find out.
discontent, right?
that I can guarantee.
So let's talk about, and this is interesting. You say it's a major milestone, and that's the part where I'm confused. I get confused about the rings. I'm so sorry. There are slow rings and fast rings, and then you told me that there was a ring that wasn't really a ring. What is
The
it?
ring's done. You don't have to worry about that ring.
Yes, I'm trying to toss it out of my mind, but it's like a boomerang. It keeps coming back.
Yeah.
Why is it a major milestone that 1020H1 is heading to the slow ring?
So the main reason it's a major milestone is because that means it's almost done.
Okay, right.
Right. So it's been tested for like close to a year, right? In skip ahead and fast ring, the 20H1 release, and now it's hitting slow ring. I assume then it will hit release preview ring. But a lot of people think 20H1, oh, that's going to be done in March or so next year, right? But back to my point about the alignment of the Azure and the Windows schedules, no, because if you're following the Azure schedule, they try to get their next release done this year. So they're trying to, if they're still using the schedule I saw, December is when they are hoping to RTM 20H1. And does that, people are saying, oh, so that means it's going to come out in January, right? Or February, like early next year. I don't believe so. I think Microsoft is going to stick to the spring, fall release of Windows, even if they finish it internally earlier, because once it's done, RTM'd, whatever you want to call it, they just keep fixing it, right? They keep adding more cumulative updates and fixes and patches. So it even when it's done and they maybe turn it over to developers only, it still can continue to evolve and be updated and all. So it's the reason it's a major milestone is it's almost RTM'd, we think, 20H1.
Gotcha, right. Which is really interesting. I mean, maybe 3 weeks ago-ish, Microsoft announced to the Windows Insider program that they felt like Windows 10 1909, the previous version now, the one that just came out this week, was complete, right? And we had commented at the time, like, wow, they've never really said that for any version of Windows 10. That's kind of interesting. And so within a couple of weeks, they switched at least some significant portion of the people who were testing 1909 or 19H2, depending on how you want to refer to it, over to 20H1, right? Mm-hmm. And that is a big milestone, right? And like Mary Jo said, at some point in the next, we don't really know when, but at some point, they will switch over the release preview ring as well. And when that happens, it's, it's done. Like at that point, there may be bug fixes, but literally it's done. And, this other note we have about I think it was last night, Microsoft released another 20H1 build. We keep looking at these builds like, okay, there's got to be something in here, right? No, there are no new features in these builds, or very few new features. It's really kind of interesting. For a version of Windows 10 that's been tested as long as this one has, it has to have the lowest ratio of new features to builds of any version of Windows 10 anyway.
Yeah.
So does that mean this is all just bug fixes that are happening behind the scenes and not, or do we think that this is an overall shift from, hey, we're not going to add a bunch of new features? Like we talked about a little bit, it's the maturity of the platform. Now it's just time to make sure it's running
They still have plans to add new features. Don't
right.
don't worry about that.
What are some of these new features?
I don't necessarily mean 20H1, but Microsoft as an organization.
Oh, I see.
They're not done with Windows. I mean, there are people actively planning to add new features to Windows 10.
Yep. So if you're asking what's new in 20H1, because we have seen some new features like Cortana as a standalone app, and I think is new to 20H1. Windows Subsystem for Linux 2, I think 20H1 also. The whole sign into a device with Windows Hello Pin and the faster Bluetooth pairing. So there are things, there are features, but nothing you would be like, wow, I have to have this release because I want that. Right.
Yeah. And that, by the way, that speaks to the conversation we had earlier where I was saying, if you looked at a version of Windows 10 that was 3 years old, let's say, and you were used to the version that just came out, it would be very familiar. It's not like we're completely different. Like this version's all green and blue and this one's all silver. They look, it looks like Windows 10.
Yeah. So I think that, again, that does speak to relative maturity of the platform, where at this point, I guess, you can add little baubles and give Cortana a cool necklace or something and add AR tracking features. But at this point, when it comes to sort of how it looks and, well, how it's shaped, I guess is probably the best way to put that, because they can change how it looks all the time. As we said, add more translucency, but it is a platform.
It's the cowbell of Windows 10 UX.
Exactly.
But you know what? I think they're also adding enterprise features too, and it's a little harder sometimes to find the list of those or to dig those out. Right. But they're making some pretty big tweaks around security and more enterprisey stuff too.
Yep.
Now that involves, of course, a lot of the things that they announced at Ignite, I would imagine, in terms of how the Windows machines integrate with all of those different cool tools that they announced. But
hundreds of pages of book of news,
yeah, I'm sure you've looked through that. Maybe you sat down with your highlighter pen and gone through it all. So I guess another question then, we talked a little bit about how server side is a little bit different from, and this goes back to 1909, I realize, but are there folks that are testing Windows like 20H1, but server side? Is that how that works? It's 20H1 for the, as a normal, and then also for the server. And do those get new features, or are those mostly just like, it's stable, we're good?
They get way fewer new features. And the problem on server is when we see blog posts about the new releases of like 19H2, 20H1, they usually just say, here it is. There's a new version out. And they don't tell you any of the features.
By the way, there's a second problem. And this is something Mary Jo probably has a better handle on than I do, because there are really two versions of server. And I'm going to get the names wrong, but there's a version of server, which is what we used to call server core. You can't even put a user interface on top of it. It's a command line. And you can, in the past, you could add a package that would add the UI back to it. Now you cannot. And then there's a longer, like a longer term servicing branch, whatever it's called, which is kind of the server as we used to know it. It brings up a GUI. There's an admin center that runs on it, and you can add roles and add workloads and so forth. So server has really changed, and in part because of the move to the cloud, right? So server kind of targets specific workloads and specific scenarios, because for a lot of people, it's like you're not really running Exchange on your Windows server in a closet somewhere anymore, or in a data center or whatever it is. You're getting a lot of those services through through the cloud instead.
Yeah. So he's talking about Nano server, right? That completely changed in its definition, server core, and then there's standard, there's data center. There's a lot of different versions of the server, and whenever I ask Microsoft what are the new features in like 19H2 server, they'll be like, it's all focused on application compatibility and performance. That's kind of their like standard answer when you ask them what's new on server. But there's a lot more granularly new if you really dig into the release notes. And people who are very much involved in testing in server, of course, for them, they notice every little nuance and change in server, right? But
so is that a case where you kind of have to talk to those experts? This is a little bit, I'm just speaking about your process here, because I'm curious. I mean, you cover this stuff. And so are you, do you have some server running somewhere that you sort of play around with to try and figure out what's the latest?
No. I don't. I rely on people telling me, when I say there's a new version of server out, there's nothing. Microsoft didn't list anything in the notes. Sometimes people will come back to me and say, "Oh yeah, they didn't list this, but this is in there." And sometimes you'll get feedback like that, or sometimes you just have to wait until the end when they occasionally will post a blog post and say, "Here's all the new things that we added to server."
They're really not trying to drum up excitement on the server side, right? And that makes sense. But even
they're not
Windows
killing
10
server. But
no,
they're not trying to get you to go there.
Of course. I mean, customers need it. But, even the Windows 10, if you look at the most recent Insider Preview blog post, I mean, we're experimenting with something. Here's a list of the known issues. Here's the list of some of the problems we fixed. I mean, there's nothing, it's not like, oh, we've added like sparkles to everything now. So when you click on something, it explodes into confetti or whatever. They're really not adding that kind of stuff at this point.
I think Paul wants fireworks and sparkles in his windows.
Really, I just want more emoji. I think if everything could just be
right. Mm-hmm. I remember when Mary Jo was teaching me how to get to the emoji picker, and you were like, "Oh no, can I just leave?"
So I could teach you how to turn that off permanently.
That's my only Windows tip that I probably know.
I'm glad to have that one. I appreciate that one.
Good.
Now, this is really exciting because, Paul, you were talking about how I got a little excited about the Surface Pro. Oh, golly. Is that what it's called? The Surface Pro 10 X. See, darn it.
Surface I don't know why you're confused by that. We use it indiscriminately in different ways.
But you mentioned that, the Surface Pro X is cool, but there are going to be a lot of issues for certain apps that would be available on that platform, or rather would not be compatible with the Surface Pro X. And now we've got news of some emulation taking place. Microsoft's working on bringing 64-bit Intel apps.
Well, this was the thing. So Mary Jo and I were sitting in a meeting in October at the Surface event, and someone asked, it might have been me, I don't know, one of us asked, what's going on with 64-bit? Have you talked? Because, the story to date had been, we're working with the Adobes of the world to figure out, getting their apps back on, in native ARM form, ideally, or whatever. And this time the guy said, well, never say never. I'm like, well, you have literally said never. I mean, in the past, you said never, So that was when we kind of got the whiff of like, okay, they're working on this. And that's why I developed my theory that Microsoft's SQ1 processor, I think is the name of it, which is a derivation of whatever it's called. It's a derivation of the Snapdragon processors, was designed specifically for this future, that Microsoft was looking to optimize its own chipsets for the needs of running Intel bytecode or whatever on this different platform. Mm-hmm. With an eye toward in the future, we're going to support x64 apps. Yeah. And today we received the news, I guess, from Neowin, from Rich Woods, who we do trust, that he's heard from multiple sources that they are, in fact, going to do this. They're going to, at some point, enable 64-bit app support, 64-bit Intel app support, I should say, on ARM, which would be the final mile, right? The thing that's really kind of screwing this platform up right now. So it's good.
Yeah, I really did think this was technically impossible because the way, first, I'm a journalist, not a technologist. Everyone knows, just to be clear, because I'm going to say a bunch of words that are going to just sound like mumbo jumbo here. But Windows on Windows, which is how they emulate 32-bit apps on Windows, on ARM. I thought it technically couldn't. By the way,
it's how they emulate 32-bit Windows apps on Windows 64-bit.
On Windows also.
On Intel.
Right.
Yeah.
Yeah.
So
but I thought you couldn't. I thought you actually couldn't physically use that to emulate 64-bit apps on Windows on ARM. Like I thought there was a prohibition inside of that subsystem that wouldn't let you do it. So that's why I'm so surprised. I also trust Rich, and I'm surprised about this.
The issue,
how this is going to work.
I mean, it's a complicated issue, and I can't pretend to understand it completely either. But I mean, some of the things I vaguely have in my head is that the Windows and Windows subsystem that allows you to run 32-bit apps on a 64-bit system exists. And so porting that to ARM was relatively easy. They don't have one for 64-bit, right? There's never going to be 128-bit Windows that they need to, and even if there was, they wouldn't run into this issue anyway. It doesn't matter. But so for one thing, it would be a brand new endeavor, right? So they'd have to do that. And then, of course, the differences in the processors, the differences in the cores, the differences in the registers makes this not technically impossible, but technically very difficult. And again, like I said, this is just me theorizing, but given all the information we get as we get it, I was like, this has got to be why they're making this processor. Part of the reason, right? So today you could say, well, we're going to sacrifice some battery life, but the performance is going to be better. And that's what people really want, which of course they do because they want to run Intel apps. But the other issue, of course, is the 64-bit thing, which again is not just applications. It's not just Photoshop and whatever other applications are 64-bit only.
Well, games.
It's drivers and games, for sure. But it's also drivers. Yeah. It's a huge problem. Windows has a lot of what they call class drivers, and so those work everywhere. If you have like an HP printer up on your network somewhere, like I do here, you could use an ARM machine. It would see it. It would work. It would probably print fine. It would probably just work. But if you want to use the HP software that does like edge-to-edge printing or whatever the special features are of that printer, you need to install the driver set. Well, bad news. That's not going to install on ARM. It just does not work. It doesn't matter if it's 32 or 64-bit. It's just not going to work. And so that's part of this effort. I think for this platform to just work is the goal, right? That no one should have to worry about what is underneath the covers. They buy a Windows computer, it runs everything.
Yeah.
That's the goal.
But here's the downside, though. Rich reports on NeoWin. When might consumers see this? 21H1. So not next year, the year after.
Oh, wow. So this is still a while away. By that time, it won't be the Surface Pro X. It will be X.
Well, so he was saying, he's like, this will work on every generation of ARM hardware. It's like, well, hold on a second here. So the 835, which was a smartphone chip from like 2 years ago, was what they used for the first gen chips. It was terrible. It was terrible even running native apps. The 850, which came out probably 6 to 9 months later, also terrible. The 8CX, I don't think is shipping in any computers yet, but the Microsoft version, the SQ1, is shipping in Surface Pro X. Those are probably going to be the lowest end systems you would ever even want to consider running that emulation on, right? I mean, the chipsets are going to improve.
Because I would prefer for a thing to just not work at all than for it to work at a horrible performance speed. You know what I mean? Because then there's a part of me that's going to try to use Photoshop, and then it's like, oh, I can't.
So there's a line, right? If in some ways it's better for something to work, even if it's a little slow. But yes, you're right. If it's so bad that it's a million years ago, my wife had a 286 computer. I installed Windows on it, and you could literally watch it draw the box for a menu.
Oh my God.
Then it would fill in the divider lines. Then it would slowly draw each letter in each menu item. And then, and then you could click on something. Like, it was that slow. And at that point, you're like, maybe this just not working is the
at that point, it should just not work. It should say, sorry, I can't do this for you.
So we'll see. But you know what? This tells me that Microsoft is literally serious about this platform, right?
Yeah.
And there's a big difference between Microsoft saying they're serious, and we'll see what happens, but they're literally serious. Like, they're actually working on this. So I take that as a good sign for anyone who cares about the platform, that there's a future there.
Absolutely. And then another cool thing is that for folks who do have the Surface Pro X, they can get.
Oh no, it's the Surface Pro 10, by the way.
Oh my God, I can't.
No, I'm kidding.
I'm going to call it SPX from now on.
Just X.
I don't know why he keeps saying X. It's weird. It's like he doesn't listen.
I gotta get out of here. This is Lisa. This is my last show, right? No. So for folks who are using the SPX, they can get excited because they can download Credge, which I'm still calling it that because the Windows team has not got in touch with me to give me one of their denim jackets. So sorry, I still have to call it Credge. And that's exciting. As you said, that you talked about it being a serious thing for them taking this platform seriously, and with how excited everybody seems to be about.
Ignite, though, they couldn't have shipped this last week.
Yeah,
it's kind of a shame.
Point. Yeah, that is kind of weird that now all of this news is coming out a little bit after Ignite has taken place. But for folks who were excited about the latest version of Microsoft Edge with Chromium, that's exciting. That's great.
Yep.
Yeah.
Canary Channel. Yep. Canary Channel gets it first.
Okay. Now, is it a channel or is it a ring? Help me out.
That's a channel.
Okay. Oh boy.
Why? Yeah. No one knows why.
Why? Because they're following the Chrome.
I know they're following
Chromium. Chromium uses channels.
Well, I think in my head I'll just call it the Canary Ring, but it's whatever. Yeah. We're going to take a quick break before we come back to talk about something that I cannot wait to hear about. It goes on your face and it takes you to sort of a different world, but I'm not saying more than that. It goes on your face and it takes you to space. I love it. That's great. Or goes on your face and augments your space. Either one. But until then, this episode of Windows Weekly is brought to you by Microsoft Mechanics, Microsoft's official show about the latest Microsoft tech. Every week, they do engineering deep dives on the latest tech announcements from Microsoft. They touch on trending IT topics and bring you detailed, step-by-step, multi-part tutorials. So, for example, the recent series for Windows Virtual Desktop or large-scale Windows and Office deployment. These are not your usual rambling how-to videos or even off-the-cuff tech interviews. In fact, they are carefully crafted both verbally and visually with demos and how it works graphical explanations. Most are under 15 minutes, so they get to the point without wasting your time. And they're like visual Cliff's Notes for Microsoft Tech. But here's the best part. It's free. You'll want to check out everything from the latest Surface devices to cloud or on-premises infrastructure improvements across Azure and Windows, database architectures, management and admin tools, security and compliance controls, productivity, innovation, and more across Microsoft's complete range of products and services for business. If you checked out Microsoft Ignite this November, then you may have also had the opportunity to see the folks from Microsoft Mechanics presenting live every day. So they were there and talking about all that tech in action behind the announcements. So regardless of whether you're a tech enthusiast, an IT professional, or an architect looking to stay up to date, visit aka.ms/WWMechanics today and subscribe. And I'm going to spell that out. That's aka.ms/WWMechanics. Or subscribe wherever you listen to your podcasts. Watch Microsoft Mechanics, your free go-to source to discover the latest Microsoft tech. And of course, thank you to Microsoft Mechanics for sponsoring this week's episode of Windows Weekly. I happen to think that pairing Microsoft Mechanics with IT Pro TV is going to get you 3/4 of the way there. The rest, of course, is by watching Windows Weekly here on Twit. So thank you so much to Microsoft Mechanics. What was that, Paul?
Sorry, I was gonna say they must have been at Ignite, but I didn't see Microsoft Mechanics.
They were. I saw them. Yeah, they were there.
Yeah, they said
they were running all around.
Apparently, they were presenting live every day, so I wouldn't be surprised if they were running everywhere.
Yeah, nice. That's too bad I didn't run into those guys.
So it goes on your face and augments your space. What is it we were talking about? HoloLens 2. It's here, and you both got to try it. I'm so jealous. I haven't even seen the first one.
Yeah. Yep.
Tell me everything.
We get to try it again. We had already tried it once.
You tried the second version once before, and this was the second time?
Yep.
Tell me everything.
I went to Barcelona to see it when they first announced it.
Oh, wow. Is it cool?
It's awesome.
What did you do in it? I don't know what to ask. I have no information about it other than...
I balanced my checkbook.
Oh, my goodness.
I wrote a couple notes in Notepad.
Yeah.
I don't know.
Oh, my goodness. See, this is what Microsoft, you need to get in touch with me because I will wax ecstatic about this thing if I get a chance to try it. So other than balancing your checkbook, did you pet virtual dogs? Like what can you do with this thing?
No. So for Microsoft is positioning HoloLens 2 and used to at the end position HoloLens 1 as more of a business device now, right? They still have things where they show you games and creative things you can do, but the real reason they are selling these devices is because they're finding ways to get companies who are in specific vertical markets to adopt them for their workforce and especially first-line workers. So they're not the demos you're thinking of, right? They're not like petting dogs and stuff.
It's not Minecraft or...
No.
Oh, but that's the coolest thing it can do.
Yeah. But when we get to try it at Ignite again, they did show us very consumery kinds of things. Like you get to hold your hand out and a hummingbird came and sat on your hand. And then when you flipped your hand over, it flew away because it couldn't see your hand, articulated gestures of your hand now. So that was cool, what else did we get to do?
That was not meant to be like, this is what we use it for. It was just a demo so you understand this new gesture that they have.
Yeah.
Right. Now,
I love the new gestures. So the first generation gestures of the HoloLens I thought were really hard to do. Like, this gesture, I forget what they call this. What is that thing?
Inchworm?
Yeah.
Like
they call that
the way you select something. Like
it's like
hard
a weird
to
pinch.
Do it. Yeah. But now you can actually have like the start menu show up in your wrist as a hologram and you can touch it on your wrist. And, that was cool. Yeah. I'm like, that makes way more sense. It really makes sense.
Right? They understand the position of your hands. So if you put your palms up, you'll get a little, like she said, a little start. You'll see a little hologram start menu on your wrist.
So this is really like you are using Windows on your body. It's like, is that the point? Is to be able to experience Windows in a different way, and two, it's like it's a good tool for training, and some of the examples have been given are architecture or in building and things like that, where you need to look out and see, okay, I know that I need to install this pipe here that goes to this.
there's going to be a bunch of application types that are very similar that have nothing to do with each other as far as the types of businesses they are. So architecture is a great example, or people who are making a car, right? So if you're a car designer in the past or today, most of them actually make these giant clay models because you want this kind of 3D thing. You can walk around and see how pieces fit and everything. But of course, with holograms, you can make that same thing, but you can explode it out, or whatever the businesses are. But so you as the creator, you have the HoloLens because you're creating, but the people around, when you want to show it to other people, you don't have to buy a $3,500 HoloLens for everybody. They can use their smartphone, they can use an iPad or a computer or whatever, because these things all have AR platforms built into them as well. And there's a viewing experience, which makes plenty of sense. And if you've used it on a phone or an iPad, or you know how that works. You can, I have in my phone, I can make it look like there's a stormtrooper standing over in the middle, the corner of the room or whatever. When I hold the phone up, I can see it. And so same thing. It's like it's in 3D space. And I think that, or I should say I know that because these things have happened since they announced the original HoloLens. Like the markets have occurred, that need this kind of tool. Like Microsoft, when they first came out with it, they were like, well, we think people will find this useful, but we don't know how they will find it useful. We don't know what markets will embrace this. And now I think we have a better idea of how that's going to work in the real world. So it's really exciting. And even V1, which, had a very bad, it was Greg Sullivan from Microsoft described it as a 16:9 like a frame, a field of view. The holograms only appear here. So even though you can see out, like you could see your peripheral vision, the holograms only appeared in this really small kind of mail slot type area.
I see.
So if balls bounced around, they would disappear from your vision as they went outside of that area.
Which sort of ruins the illusion.
So now it's much bigger. It's 3x, I think he said. And the central magic of HoloLens has always been there since V1, which is there's a virtual object, a hologram they call it, sitting on a, like say it's sitting on a table, or it's a ball. Maybe it rolls on the table and bounces off, and it fools your brain into thinking that it's there. Not just that it's there floating in space, but that it's realistically interacting with the actual environment.
Wow.
It fools you. Like it's real. It seems real to your brain. That's always been there, but now it's more of a vista view, and that puts it over the top.
The other good thing is the hardware itself is changed, right? So before, when you wore HoloLens 1, it just felt like you had this giant helmet on, almost like a motorcycle helmet for me. And and then now you just can put it on your head. You can tighten the clip on the back. It sits really nicely on your head. Even if you have glasses, it accommodates them. And the visor flips up, like all these little things they did. It's lighter. It's just way easier to wear. And I don't know, people who remember when I talked on Windows Weekly about having a vision issue with it when I tried HoloLens 2 for the first time, that originally Microsoft thought was because of my glasses, because I wear progressive lenses. This time, it didn't happen. And I think the reason it didn't was they really tightened it more on my head so it didn't slide.
I see.
They were like,
just
keep
turning
that crank.
Are you in pain yet? Hold on.
Right.
Hold on.
So when she
it's not going to work unless it hurts. Hold on.
Yeah. It's got to hurt just a little, and that's how you know you've got a perfect fit.
No, but it worked so much better. It worked for me so much better.
Oh, that's good. I'm glad.
Yeah. So I think, between February and today, they've added a couple of new features. Mary Jo mentioned the palm gestures, which is really cool. And then, of course, you get the little start, which is it's just when you see it, you're like, yes, it's so obvious and wonderful when you see how well, it just really works well. But they also added the ability to grab a hologram and walk around with it. And so they have this, it was just a demo app. You would never really use this in real life, but they say, draw a squiggle in front of you. And I'm waiting for like an app to appear. And finally he said, what are you doing? I said, well, I'm waiting for the app. And he says, no, just draw in the space. And so and this 3D squiggly looking thing appears.
Graffiti kind of thing.
Yeah. It has depth, right? It's not a 2D drawing. It's, if you move your hand in and out, it's like a spaghetti in space almost.
Yeah.
But then you can reach up and you can grab a piece of the spaghetti. And you can move it. You can move it up and down and around. You can walk with it. You can walk over to the other side of the room and bring it with you.
Oh
you
my
can
goodness!
Zoom in and out. And And in my case, like what I thought of immediately was kind of like a medical app. You could almost imagine
anatomy.
Like
oh my goodness!
Yeah, a body where you could like pull the intestines out or something and look inside and see what's underneath or whatever. It's really impressive.
It was good. Yeah, it was definitely a big jump between 1 and 2. HoloLens 1 and 2.
Oh yeah, for sure. I mean, not just 1 and 2. Remember the very first time we saw it.
Yeah.
This thing was tethered. It was enormous. It was like the Darth Vader chamber from Empire Strikes Back. That giant thing comes down. You know, it's like it sucks onto your head. Yeah. I mean, it was like this gigantic contraption. And of course, the goal for HoloLens, for whatever reason, is for it to be non-tethered. Mm-hmm. But now you see it in V2, and it's like, oh, this actually makes total sense. Like, it's awesome. It's light. It doesn't, weigh down in your nose like the first one kind of could in my case. It just kind of floats in your head, and it's light, and it works great.
And you can have all your Excel spreadsheets up so you can balance it.
If you want, you could.
I'm just going to pull out that number right there and really look at it. Man, I really spent that much money.
Flip it around.
Yeah.
I mean, they didn't do that this time, but back in V1 timeframe, they did a great series of demos for us. And one of the really good ones was you're standing in front of an electrical conduit box or whatever, and you have to fix something. But I don't know how this stuff works. I don't want to electrocute myself, whatever it is. And so you're wearing the HoloLens, and of course there's a little Skype video window up here. The guy who's there can see what you're looking at because it has cameras built into it. He's telling you what to do. He can see what you're doing, so he can guide you. He doesn't have to go to the site to help someone fix something. Like you can have it's not virtual. It's it's virtual in a location kind of sense, but the person is wherever they are, viewing what you're seeing remotely and helping you without having to travel there.
And can they also do notes in augmented space? Did they show that? Because that is something that I found very cool, where you can draw and say, hey, point an arrow. This wire is the one that you want, and it needs to connect to this.
No, not in this particular one. This one, it was.
But they've shown that, right? They have shown that before.
Yeah.
Oh yeah, we didn't talk about the eye tracking stuff, where if you're reading on the screen, you can scroll with your eyes. So you're reading a passage of text, and you just keep looking down, and it automatically just scrolls for you.
Oh my goodness!
You can see what part you're looking at. So naturally,
so as you're looking through and you're scanning, then it knows, okay, you got to the end.
It starts scrolling, so you can, and it will scroll to the speed that you read, because it will notice if you can't keep up, you'll kind of look up a little bit,
right? And
it will actually just adjust as it goes.
Oh my goodness, that'd be super nifty. I like the idea too. Again, going back to, of course, I'm approaching things from the consumer side because I actually like consumers and don't hate them like somebody else. And so I think of it from that perspective. And this would be a great thing where, as I would imagine that you folks have also played the tech expert in your families at different points. And to be able to help someone with how do I set up my DVD player that connects, or I guess it'd be set-top box these days. Do people still use DVD players? And right now, when I am helping my grandma is like one of the most tech-forward people. I'm so proud of like what she does do. But every once in a while, there'll be something that she needs my help with. And what we do is we FaceTime and talk about it. Yeah. But to take that an extra step where you could,
but it's FaceTime plus go to meeting, or something. It's
I can see all the things that she sees. She can see me, and I can help her with that. And then, like I said, with that extra feature of maybe being able to sketch on the screen and things, and it shows up in 3D space. That's super cool. And as these get lighter, then it makes more sense that, people could hang out with each other. And
I mean, HoloLens has been around so long. It's kind of hard to even wrap your head around this little fact. But if you go back to 2015 when they first announced it, Windows Phone was still a thing, right? So people may remember that very first demo. They did a thing where you would use a Windows Phone, which no longer exists, to look at a 3D object of some kind and create a map, create a virtual 3D object. And then that would be something you could manipulate inside of HoloLens. And of course, today the experience is a little different. Windows Phone is gone again, but both iOS and Android have, and actually Windows, have AR platforms built into them. AR, like ARKit or whatever. And so they will take, apps can take advantage of that. So people who write HoloLens apps will often do the viewer app for iOS and or Android and or Windows, I guess. So again, you can have this kind of different levels of experiences. Like only one person needs the helmet, the guy that made the thing, whatever it might be. Whereas the other people, it's like the car design is a classic one. You could have 12 people standing in a space. Anyone looking at them would wonder what the heck they were looking at. There's nothing there.
Right.
But the guys got the helmet on. Maybe a couple of them do. A couple of them might have, iPads or phones or whatever, and they're walking around it. Well, what if you moved the door frame here, or what if you did this? And you can open the door frame virtually, if you will.
Right.
Because again, you can drag these things around. You can't get in the car obviously because there's nothing to sit on. But you can kind of look in it, look around, see it from the inside as well. I mean, it's fascinating.
Super. There are so many different ways that this technology can be used, and I think that's what always gets me all starry-eyed about it, which is why I was jokingly upset about the checkbook balancing thing at the beginning. Of course,
I was underselling it.
Exactly.
So, like virtual reality is interesting on some level, but the problem with virtual reality is you can't see the world.
You're out of the space completely,
and that's why augmented reality is so interesting because the room they had at Ignite I thought was really cool for this. Because it was a large space, a couple of chairs and whatever, and they had things over on the side. But like the guy who did the demo, who Mary Jo and I have known forever, Greg, before your demo starts, he's actually walking over to other parts of the room, and he's doing stuff. Then he walks over here and he does it again. Then he goes over here and he does it again. Like he's setting up the demos.
Wow!
And you can't see anything.
Cleaning up the holograms.
Kids, sweep up your holograms.
Oh, sorry, Mary Jo left the hologram all over the place over here. Let me just clean that up. It's unbelievable.
Yeah, it's pretty cool.
Wow,
it really is neat.
Well, that is super, super cool. Let us talk a little bit more about Microsoft.
Sure.
A little bit outside. This is not so HoloLens, but CCPA, which is, of course, the California Consumer Privacy Act. So California, I can say that now, we have put a law in place that's a little bit like GDPR. GDPR. Whatever it is, I forget now. GDPR, there we go.
The gross domestic product. No, wait.
What is it?
The General Data Protection, something, I think.
General Data Protection Regulation. There we go.
Yeah.
Yes.
Thank you, Cortana. JK, it was Google. So with that, CCPA, the California Consumer Privacy Act, has a lot of companies doing kind of what they did with GDPR, which is, well, we've got to support it there, so we might as well just support it everywhere. Now companies are kind of hopping on board to say, let's make sure that we're supporting CCPA everywhere, not just in California. So Microsoft is doing this too.
That's the whole story right there. Microsoft's going to do that, and they're going to do it for everywhere in the United States. Because eventually, of course, we're going to have national laws or regulations for this, right? And it will probably be a superset of this, hopefully, at some point. You could make the argument, I mean, GDPR or something like GDPR is something that needs to happen everywhere. Probably that's exactly what this is. And so this is the first step. California, as what is like the world's 5th largest economy, tends to go their own way on certain things, like air or car emissions and so forth. So they're often on the front line for this kind of stuff. So not surprisingly, they're among the first, or the first, I think, in this case, to have a privacy law. So Microsoft will support it everywhere. That's good for everybody.
Yeah, especially for companies that are starting up now that are specialists in making sure that other companies are following CCPA regulations. There's a booming market right now to be, yes, we will help you figure out CCPA and make sure you're compliant with GDPR all at the same time for our $50 million package.
Yes. Yeah. Actually, I believe that is a level of Microsoft licensing. They'll do that for you.
Oh, well, there you go.
Well, actually, that's part of the deal. By the way, part of the deal that Microsoft is offering here, or part of the thing that they're saying about this is not only that they are doing this, but they're going to advise their enterprise customers on how they can also meet the needs of this regulation.
Now, that's nice. That's really good. Because I do not envy anyone who has to figure all that stuff out to make sure.
Plus, it's going to change, right? I think this is something that evolves over time. Other states will adopt things that will be just like it or not quite just like it. Eventually, like I said, it will go national. And so Microsoft has basically pledged, like, look, we're gonna track this thing. We know it's going to change. We'll be there as it changes. We will support it. And then Facebook, I'm sure, did exactly the same thing.
Yeah.
Oh, golly. Don't get me started.
No.
We've got Microsoft phasing out some products, which happens occasionally with every company. I think everybody likes to call it sunsetting. So there's sunsetting.
I call it pulling a Google.
Oh,
I saw you did.
That's what I call it in my heart. That is also what it's called. So Microsoft invoicing,
Yeah.
Outlook Customer Manager, and the Skype Translator bot. But here's what maybe is different with Microsoft that is not like Google. There are services to replace these things, right? Or is it just for the Translator bot, Mary Jo?
Just for the Translator bot in this case. So let's start with that one. If you've ever used Translator bot in Skype, you know it's a separate thing that you have to have installed in Skype. So what they're trying to do at Microsoft is actually incorporate the ability to translate conversations on the fly between languages as part of the service. So what they're replacing the bot with is Skype. I think it calls Skype translated conversations as a feature built into Skype. Right now, translated conversations is available in, I think, a handful of languages: Chinese, English, UK and US, French, German, Italian, Japanese, Portuguese, Russian, and Spanish. So it's a very cool feature. If you've ever seen it demoed by anyone, it's going to be just built right into Skype. So if you're Skyping with someone who does not speak your language and it's one of those languages, it'll automatically be able to translate while you're conversing.
That's really handy.
Yes.
Now, this is just for chat, right? It's not, or does it also include video?
I believe right now it is for chat. Let me see if I can look that up real quick.
I can imagine how cool it would be to get the video added there where you are having
instant messages and calls.
What?
Yep.
Okay, that's neat.
Yeah, that is neat. I've never actually seen this in my Skype, but I also don't Skype with many people who their
because
main
in addition
language
to
is not
consumers,
English.
she can't stand people from
Yeah,
other
that's
countries.
true.
I know. All right. No, most people know Americans typically don't understand anything except English, so they luckily have learned our language, unlike many of us who don't know multiple languages.
And some Americans think they speak American, which is a whole nother level of interesting.
Exactly.
The brightest bunch is what he's trying to say.
Oh,
Yeah.
dear.
But the other two products, though, Outlook Customer Manager and Microsoft Invoicing, these were products that Microsoft built a couple of years ago for small business customers. And the reason they say they're phasing them out next year is well, they didn't actually say this outright, but it sounds like because not many people use them. I can tell you the one I'm a little surprised about is invoicing, because I do know a number of Office 365 Business Premium customers who have this feature and have been using it, and they're not very happy. I mean, Microsoft's giving them kind of a, hey, you know what? We're sorry we're doing this, and we're going to let you have a free year using this company's product if you want, because we realize we're just kind of phasing this thing out. But I will say this is not the first small business product Microsoft has had that they have cut like this. And I had several users on Twitter say to me, I don't know if I'm going to trust them for these little handy small business apps they keep building and killing.
So
That's very Google.
Outlook Customer Manager, for example, is something that debuted like several years ago. It was around for a long time.
It's like a simple, very, very simple CRM product.
Yeah,
right?
it's like CRM for people who aren't paying for CRM, basically, right?
Yeah.
So, and that, okay, whatever. But I will say I have concerns along those lines, right? If you look at Office, if you have an Office 365 commercial account, which Mary Jo does and I do as well, it's kind of astonishing how many. Most of them are web-based, but whatever, how many apps they have. Like, it's not just the Word, Excel, all the stuff you kind of used to. It's like there's like this crazy list of stuff, and it's like, what? I don't even know what half of it is.
Yeah.
And I don't know, but I wonder about the longevity of it as well, right? Like, will this stuff be around? Like, if I start using this, what happens? What if I actually like one of these things?
Yeah,
I know.
Oh, that's kind of sad. You're like, I don't want to start.
I don't want to
doing
get too
these
attached. I've been burned before.
No, if you build your business around it, like you're using Microsoft Invoicing, and then they're like, next year, that's going away. So
that is not fun. But I mean, that's always we have to keep in mind that's always the risk.
It is.
Any one of these companies that we put our.
You have to seek love, and if you lose love, then
something happens. I don't know how it works.
Something.
Let it go, and if it comes back, then you love it.
Yeah, if it comes back, if Microsoft brings back Outlook Customer Manager, was meant to be,
then it loves you. I think
exactly.
Yeah, that's how it works. I think we're all going to
something like that.
Yeah, we're all going to have to figure out where we want to put. Is it eggs in the basket? I don't know any idioms anymore. I'm ruined. So Microsoft's chief technology officer is taking over for AI and research at the company because Harry Shum, is it Shum or Shum? Shum is leaving.
Shum, I think it is. Yeah. This is kind of a surprise this morning. We learned that Harry Shum been at Microsoft 23 years.
Wow.
A long time for anybody. A lot of those years in Microsoft research and working on Bing back in the early days. Right. When was it? About 2016. So 3 years ago, he became head of a really big and important division at Microsoft called AI Plus Research. Microsoft took some of their research technologists, they took a lot of their AI team and they merged them together to create this group of 5,000 people inside the company. And he was made the head of it. Today, we found out he's leaving. We don't know where he's going. It hasn't been announced. Right. He's got his last day is next February. He's being replaced by Kevin Scott, who was the head of infrastructure at LinkedIn and then became Microsoft's overall chief technology officer. Right. So Kevin Scott is going to stay the CTO, but also head up this AI plus research division. So his responsibilities just got multiply magnified.
Can we read Shum going to turn up at Facebook tomorrow or something? Or
yeah, so everyone's speculating where is he going to show up, right?
What are some of the things? Where do they think he might go? LinkedIn.
Yeah, some people have been guessing AWS. Some people have been guessing Google.
Yeah.
If you remember Qi Lu, who was heading up a big part of Microsoft's team, I'm trying to remember where he ended
China,
up.
Right? This was the China. I think he was Bing related, but it was Microsoft Research, right?
Right. Now,
in China.
So Qi Lu, he was heading up like Bing and a bunch of other, probably AI too at Microsoft. I'm having trouble remembering this, but when he left, he had a biking accident. And he left Microsoft and he said he couldn't fulfill his responsibilities anymore. So he needed a break. And then right after that, he went to Baidu.
Oh my goodness.
Yeah. Yeah.
Wow. But didn't they sue to prevent him from working there for some amount of time, or am I thinking of someone else?
I think you're thinking of someone else. It was just very surprising though, because here it is. He left Microsoft in 2016, kind of saying he needed a break, and then showed up very shortly thereafter as CEO.
He was going to
of
set
Baidu.
up a China-based, I thought, research and development area or whatever.
It was kind of a big surprise, and also when he left, he said he was going to continue helping Microsoft and advising them, and then he just went to Baidu.
Wow! I haven't heard from him since.
Yeah, so everybody's like, "Oh wow, I hope that doesn't happen with Harry Shum."
Right.
But
so right now we don't know what he's now reading between the lines here. Do you think the CTO taking over this position while also remaining CTO was sort of a bandage, a stopgap measurement, or as in maybe Shum didn't give a whole lot of time, or do we think that didn't really play a role? They just thought, oh, the CTO would be good to fill this role.
I can tell you a lot of what Kevin Scott has been doing lately is connected with AI.
Okay.
So he's been doing like intelligent car, intelligent edge, AI, machine learning, a lot of these projects that involve AI. So they may think this is a natural fit, and he already is conversant with what they're doing in AI.
Yeah, the other thing is, it's not like there are 1,100 candidates out there who would be good for this job. I mean, this is a very specific and very technical position. So he may or may not have surprised them, and maybe they had to scramble a little bit. But the truth is, I mean, who are you going to poach for this? You know, there aren't that many people. So
find somebody internally.
It may be just a fact that they, there really isn't anyone they could turn to.
Well, we'll have to keep an eye on Harry Shum, see where he ends up next.
Tomorrow on the Shum Alert.
Yeah, there we go.
Where's Shum? It's like, where's Waldo?
Oh my goodness, yeah. Does he wear stripy shirts a lot?
Yeah,
No.
let's roll for this.
Yeah, there you go.
Map of the world.
We'll take a little break, and when we come back, we will head to Xbox Corner. But until then, I'll tell you about Wasabi Hot Cloud Storage. Wasabi is low-cost, high-speed, fully secure storage that completely blows away the competition, including Google and, well, Microsoft. According to industry-leading market research firm Gartner Group, by 2025, 80% of enterprises will have shut down their traditional data center versus 10% today. Analysts expect a massive migration to the cloud for its associated cost savings, operational efficiencies, and transformative way of scaling your business. You can make it very simple to scale your business when it's all in the cloud. Well, simpler. Data storage is a massive concern. There will be an estimated 163 zettabytes by 2025. If you're wondering, that's 21 zeros for those counting. Quite a bit of data. Being able to efficiently and affordably store that data is critical for businesses to innovate and gain a competitive advantage. And companies are going to need to store in the cloud. But there are a lot of concerns with that. A lot of concerns and a lot of time spent on figuring out how exactly to go about that. Well, Wasabi addresses many of those concerns with technology that's turning the industry on its ear. The revolutionary process lays data on disks sequentially as opposed to in blocks, and Wasabi is enterprise-class cloud storage that's 80%, yes, I said 80% cheaper and up to 6 times faster than the better-known brands and as secure as you can get, with 11 nines of durability, immutable storage, and data center redundancy. It's just as secure and in some cases even more secure than on-premise storage, and it's HIPAA, FINRA, and CJIS compliant. Wasabi. You can calculate savings for yourself and start a free trial of unlimited storage for a month if you go to wasabi.com and click the free trial link and enter the code WINDOWS. Join the movement and migrate your data to the cloud with confidence. All you have to do is head to wasabi.com. Make sure to use the offer code WINDOWS. Of course, thanks to Wasabi Hot Cloud Storage. I love that name. I have to say it like that. Hot Cloud Storage for their support of Windows Weekly and making things much simpler. And like I said, 80% more cost effective. That's such a huge amount. We appreciate your support here on Windows Weekly. Okay, I love this from Paul here. We've got a controller that you can't afford and you shouldn't buy, but it's better.
It's also the top Xbox story today. Yeah, so I don't know, 3 years ago-ish, Microsoft released something called the Xbox Elite Controller. And if you think about how an Xbox controller works, obviously there's like a D-pad, there are buttons, and there are triggers and thumbsticks and whatever. And so this thing is made of much higher quality materials. There's a lot of metal in it. And a lot of the moving parts can be replaced. And so you have different size and shape thumb pads, different triggers. There's additional paddles you can add to it for racing games and so forth. So it's completely customizable. It's aimed at professional gamers, frankly. Costs $180, which is 3 times the cost of a normal controller.
Wait, say that price again?
And $180.
Holy cannoli.
Yeah. So the new version, what had happened since they released the original Elite controllers, that Microsoft updated the internals of the controller, not the Elite controller, the normal controller. So the normal controllers now support Bluetooth, and they have faster connectivity for using the Xbox protocol, and they also support just standard microphones. And so the new Elite controller, of course, supports that stuff. And they made some other minor modifications, but it's basically the same deal. And a lot of people are like, oh, is it worth it? Is it going to make my, I'll have a higher score or something? It's like, if you have to ask this question, you don't need it. And I had the original one. Eventually, I dropped it so many times, I basically broke it. And because I am clumsy. And
it wasn't because you were mad that you lost against Mary Jo, and so you threw it down.
No, the dreaded sniper Joe Foley. But,
exactly.
No. And so I just use the normal controller now. It's fine. I don't see any need for this thing. But, again, if you feel like spending $180 on a gorgeous metal controller, you can have it.
Is it magnesium? What is it made of?
No, it's
aluminum.
Magnesium would probably. It's probably fairly malleable. It would probably.
Isn't that what
bend
Kindles
or,
are made out
dent.
of? I thought Kindles were made out of magnesium.
Surface devices are made out of magnesium. At least some of them. Surface laptops actually made out of aluminum, if I'm not mistaken.
Mm-hmm. And this nice felt material.
Yeah, the carpet.
Unfortunately, they don't include that on the thumbsticks on the Xbox controller. For some
only
reason.
they could figure out a way to grow magnesium or grow Alcantara out of magnesium, that would be amazing.
Wow.
Exactly.
There's actually Microsoft owns an island deep in the Pacific Ocean.
No,
where
it's
grow.
actually a mine.
Oh,
they get the Alcantara.
there
It
you
grows
go.
only in the dark.
It's made by little silkworms that live
exactly.
in this mine, in this cave. Yeah. This next one has me excited because I have wanted to play the AR version of Minecraft since I saw a HoloLens demo that had Minecraft involved with it. Tell me about
the very first HoloLens demo we ever did. That was the coolest thing. That was the Minecraft demo. It was amazing. And so now you can get it on your phone. It's in early access, so it's still a beta. If you're on Android, you're in much better shape because Android supports any number of people beta testing something. If you're on Apple, you have to go through a little bit of a sign-up process to try to get in line, and you can't just go to the store and get it. But, of course, they're going to make it more broadly available eventually. I literally just installed it while we were recording the show, so I haven't had much of a chance to play. I haven't had any chance to play with it. But, of course, the point of this is that you can walk around in the real world, and Microsoft has, the game allows you to construct, Minecraft things out in what seems like the real world. And actually, Microsoft is doing a thing right now. And Mary Jo, you should go do this. It's going to be at the Hudson Yards 3 weekends in a row this month, where you can walk around with a bunch of Minecraft nerds and enjoy the AR goodness that is Minecraft.
Yes, Mary Jo, you must.
I'm actually going to Hudson Yards next week, so
There you go.
You should do it.
check it out.
Yeah, so here's the thing. This is interesting. I am currently downloading Minecraft Earth on my iOS device, and I did not have to go the way of test flight. So I don't know if they decided to open it up.
Maybe I didn't make this obvious. I have no idea what I'm talking about usually. So I'm just kidding. I thought
Saying
it was more
words.
complicated.
Yeah.
So
I
I've
just wanna
been
give an
doing it on
update.
Android. I was told it was a complicated process, but
It is. If it was in a test flight beta, then it is a complicated process, and they cap it at 10,000.
I thought that's what it was.
Yeah, but for some reason they have it available, and it may be that once I log in, then it makes you sign up for an account or something, and so they're doing it sort of internally. But we'll see.
I didn't try it.
Very cool. Minecraft Earth. It's available now in the U.S. as you said, early access beta. So you can get it for Android and iOS, and I'll see after the show because I've got to download some content to get it working.
Yeah,
so.
actually, that goes pretty quick.
Oh, good. Well, let me click.
Yeah, you could just do that right now. I bet it happens pretty quick on yours as well.
And then what is this? So much for Google being ahead.
Yeah, so one of the concerns this year, Microsoft announced late last year, and they had been rumored for months before that they were working on a game streaming service, which they're calling Project xCloud for now. And Project xCloud in the past, 30 days, plus or minus, finally started a public preview. And so they're letting in people slowly. There are only 5 games that are available right now because it's a preview. And the idea is, right now it's also, I should say, it's Android only. Eventually it'll be on basically any device. And it's a game streaming service. And so neat, we've known about this for some time, but then back earlier this year, Google announced they were coming out with their own game streaming service, which they called calling Stadia. And Stadia is launching actually, I think next week. And there was this concern. It's like, well, how is Google able to come out with this service like before Microsoft? Because Microsoft's only in preview. It probably will ship in final form sometime next year. They're only testing it on Android right now. Like, what's going on with this? And actually, as it turns out, like I've been making this case for a while now, Stadia is going to launch in a really incomplete state. So, for example, the first version of it, unless you're using a Chromecast Ultra, which is their 4K Chromecast, you actually have to wire the controller to something for it to work. It won't even work with a wireless controller. And then they announced the games that are going to be available at launch. And it's kind of like similar to the situation with the Apple TV Plus TV streaming service, where there's only a handful of games that are coming out. They're only going to have 12 games at launch. And then I think I want to say, I don't remember the exact number, but some similar number of games will ship between then and the end of the year. So, don't get too much angst over this Google thing. I'm sure it's going to be fine over time, but they're launching it in a Google way, which means incomplete. Microsoft is going through it, and they're going to launch it in a more complete state whenever they do launch it. So I wouldn't get too burned about the Google stuff, is my point.
Okay, so eventually then we'll see more. Now, that's different from Apple Arcade, which launched with more than 100 titles, if I remember correctly, where you could sort of go and try a bunch of different things out. But this sounds like it's got so many different hardware and software limits to it that...
Well, I would say Apple Arcade and Stadia and xCloud all share kind of a hardware agnostic approach in the sense that it will work on a variety of device types. I mean, Apple's service is almost certainly going to be is limited just to Apple devices, I guess. But Apple Arcade Plus is not a game streaming service, right? You actually download those games to your device.
Oh, that's true. Yes, that's a good point.
Yeah, it's a different kind. It is a subscription service, right? So that's the same, but you're actually downloading the games. In the case of Stadia and Project xCloud, you're actually streaming them over the internet.
Okay, that makes sense. Yeah, that is different. I apologize.
Well, I mean, it's different, but I mean, they still technically compete, right? I mean, so Apple's approach has certain advantages for sure. You can play it on the bus or something when you're going to work. And then Microsoft's and Google's will have other advantages. I mean, I think the big thing, actually, I'll say one of the cool things about Project xCloud is I had begun playing one of those 5 games on my Xbox. And so when I continued it on xCloud on a phone, it picked up where I had left off.
Oh, that's really neat.
Yeah, it's part of the whole ecosystem. So that actually I think is really cool.
Yeah, syncing between is a really cool feature that you can pick, like you said, any platform, pick it up.
I mean, today it's only Android because they're testing it, but it will be on iOS. Obviously, it'll be on PCs, it'll be on TVs. It's it's going to be anywhere you are. So, it will be neat eventually.
Yeah,
just like Google, probably.
Eventually, we'll get there. All right, it is time to move on to our tips and picks. Well, your tips and picks. What are we starting out with today? What is our tip of the week?
Yeah, so right at the end of the show last week, I said, "Oh, this should have been my tip." And then I said the wrong thing, which was,
oh no,
Microsoft does make, again, because I just make stuff up, like I said, I don't know what I'm talking about. So Microsoft had this big trade show last week, Ignite 2019, hundreds, maybe thousands of sessions, I don't know exactly. And they have created a central repository for the videos of all of those sessions and keynotes. In most cases, you can also download the associated PowerPoint presentation if you want that. And I think in all cases, you can also download the subtitle files if you want to have, I guess, caption files. And the mistake I made was I said you can find that stuff at Channel 9, and they're not at Channel 9. Sorry about that.
Okay.
So they're actually at Microsoft's Tech Community website. So if you go to myignite.techcommunity.microsoft.com, you'll see the front end to this, and you can filter you can search. I just want to see the Windows 10 sessions. I just want to see the developer sessions. I just want to see whatever it is. So if you didn't go to Ignite and you wanted to see what was going on there, you want to check out the things you're concerned about, or if you did go and you didn't get to go to all the sessions you wanted, this is a really, really neat way to catch up on all this stuff. So you can stream them over the internet. You can download them and watch them offline. It's up to you.
I can even rewatch the Vision keynote for the stickers.
Yeah, I don't necessarily recommend that. We told you this. Yeah, we ripped on Kyle really hard. For that.
Yeah.
And he
Sorry,
is such
Kyle.
a nice guy.
Yeah.
And I do not feel bad about that. He really deserved that.
I feel bad about it. The stickers, you know what? It was delightful at first. Does this do these sessions include anything about the stuff, Paul, that you and I were sort of excited about, the workflow automation
Power Platform?
Thank you.
Oh, yeah. Oh, for sure. Yep. There were a bunch of Power App and Power
There's
Platform
a lot of
sessions.
Power Platform.
Yep. Yeah, that's what you can do. You can go to the site and search for that, and you can just find that's what I did. Over the weekend, I would say 80% of my weekend was me playing Call of Duty while listening to sessions from Ignite that I was streaming over the internet. And most of the things I listened to were developer related. I mentioned that developer session about the app platform, and also some Windows 10 stuff. And what an incredible resource for anybody, whether you went there or not. Really nice.
And Mary Jo, it looks like you can filter out keywords, so you can make sure consumer never shows up.
I can.
Comedy never shows up.
Yeah.
Yep.
Yeah.
Choice.
International
It's handy.
languages never show up.
No, that's a handy tip because I do want to check out some of those things for
Yeah.
sure. So that's great. What about
Yes.
our app pick of the week?
Yeah, so today Brave announced the 1.0 release of their browser. So like the new Microsoft Edge, and like some other browsers, Opera is also working this way. It's based on Chromium, but like Microsoft, what they're doing is stripping out all the Google stuff, especially the trackers. And the difference between Brave and the Microsoft offering, actually there's a bunch of differences, but at a high level, very similar, right? It's the Chromium base. It supports all the extensions. It has sync, although the sync's a little awkward right now. But they're really, really privacy focused. And so they do two big, well, I will say two big things around privacy. One is they have the most aggressive tracker blocking available in any browser. This is according to the company. I don't really have any way to verify this, but they say that they're more aggressive eliminating trackers than even Firefox and Safari. And you can customize how that works. They also eliminate ads out of the box, which is kind of interesting and maybe even semi-controversial, because these two things combined, aside from the privacy implications, right, of tracking you across the internet, they also impact the performance of the browser. And so they cite 30 to 60% performance benefits over other browsers because they're just getting rid of a bunch of the crap that you don't have to load, so either silently in the background like a tracker or in the foreground like an ad that's kind of annoying because it's blinking and so forth. They get rid of autoplay video. They basically just eliminate a lot of the annoyances of the web. So they contacted me, while we were at Ignite, and they said, hey, if you want to review this, we'll make it available. And Mary Jo and I get a lot of these kind of outreach type things, and a lot of times I'm like, like whatever. But I've been sort of tracking them on the side. I've written about them a little bit, and I was like, yeah, okay, this is interesting. We were just getting excited last week about Chromium and the new logo and everything. I'm sorry, but the new Edge and the new logo. And I was like, well, let's see how these things kind of compare. So from a user experience standpoint, I would say they're very similar. Obviously, Microsoft has replaced some of the Google stuff with their own stuff, and that's good and bad, right? And so I don't, day to day, I can't say that I have ever noticed like a performance benefit of using Brave over I keep saying Chromium over the new Edge. But if you care about privacy, and I feel like a lot of people do, it's at least worth looking at. They also have a really nice, like their Brave Shields UI that comes up when they're blocking stuff. It works on mobile too, and that's actually fairly unusual. You don't see a lot of ad blocking or tracker blocking on mobile, at least not to this extent. And they've done a nice job with that. They also support content creators with kind of a tipping system where you can pay, not right now, but eventually be able to pay for premium subscriptions and stuff. But that requires the content creator to have, kind of bought into the system.
With Brave, yeah.
And there are places that LA Times has, the Washington Post has, YouTube creators can, people who stream anywhere can. And I haven't done too much with that either, right? Because I went to put money in my digital wallet, and it was like a $50 minimum, and I was like, yeah, I'm not going to put $50 into Brave. But I like the idea of it. And the goal here is I just want people to understand this exists. They're not a big company like Microsoft or Google or a well-known browser maker like Opera or Mozilla, but they're working on Chromium. If you like that kind of a thing and you like the idea of getting rid of all the Google stuff and getting rid of the tracking and getting rid of the ads, it's a really nice browser. And it does basically everything else the other browsers do.
Excellent.
Yeah, worth knowing about.
Absolutely. Yeah. I've downloaded it, in fact. And it's got it's also got a pretty app icon I quite like.
Yeah, it's different. Yeah.
All right, Mary Jo, let's leave those consumers in the dust and talk about the enterprise.
Really, let's just forget about that.
What is your pick of the week here?
My pick of the week is something introduced last week at Ignite that I didn't get to talk about last week, called Microsoft Endpoint Manager. So if you know what Configuration Manager is, it's the way many IT pros manage their Windows PCs. And if you know what Intune is, it's the cloud version of how many IT pros, well, I won't say many, some IT pros manage mobile devices. Microsoft is taking those two brands and those two products, services, and merging them together and calling everything Endpoint Manager. So at some point in the future, the names Configuration Manager and Intune are going to go away, and you'll just hear Microsoft talk about Endpoint Manager and mean both of those things. So the reason I made it the pick is I hear from a lot of Config Manager users who've been very afraid that Microsoft was just going to pull the rug out from under them and kill Config Manager and make everybody use Intune to manage their Windows PCs. But Microsoft these days is much more realistic and pragmatic than the old Microsoft was. And so they realized people are not going to move off Config Manager, and they couldn't just pull the rug out. So instead, they're giving everybody who has Config Manager licenses, Intune licenses, for free. They're not going to charge you for them. And they're hoping that you'll use Intune more that way and at least connect your Config Manager installations to Intune. And then at one point, everything will be one big, happy Endpoint Manager family. I like it. I like it because they're not just killing a product because they're trying to force people to the cloud. That's not a great solution, and not what the new Microsoft backing hybrid computing is all about. Mm-hmm. And it's nice to see them put the brand and the licensing where their mouths are.
Ooh, I like that.
How's that? I threw an idiom in there.
Yeah, yes, you're reteaching me how to use those after I somehow lost the ability. I like that, yeah. Okay, what about the developer pick of the week?
Okay, I just threw this in because I realized we didn't talk about this, but this week there's a conference called GitHub Universe for all GitHub things and people. And one of the big announcements they made there is something called GitHub Mobile. So GitHub Mobile is an application available right now in beta for iOS and coming soon for Android. And it's the way to think about it is not like a complete GitHub environment on your phone. That's not what this is. It's more for letting developers do things that don't require a full development environment on their phone. So if you want to like manage incoming notifications or review code or merge pull requests. Whoop. I'm having a little issue with my sound today. If you want to do any of those kind of more lightweight tasks on your mobile device and not have to wait until you're home or have a PC available to you, you can do this now through GitHub Mobile.
Oh, okay. That's nice. Yeah.
Yeah.
Available in more places is always nice.
Yes.
Now, is your beer pick of the week available in more places?
It is. It's available. I bet you guys can find this in California.
Is it something consumers can get?
Yeah.
It is. Many consumers can find this beer in their home states, even though it's from Pennsylvania. The beer pick is Troegs Troganator. Troegs Brewing is in Hershey, Pennsylvania. And this is a Doppelbock style beer, which is something that's very common in Germany, I believe, Bocks and Doppelbocks. But now we have these being made by U.S. brewers quite often as well. And the reason I made it the beer pick is it's a heavy beer. So it's more like a winter time, like cold weather beer. In fact, some people call Doppelbocks liquid bread.
Oh, my enemy.
It's a dark beer, but it's a lager. Very malty, but also roasty tasting. So it's not like, I'm not a big lager person, and I'm also not a big malt beer person, but sometimes you're just in the mood for that kind of beer. And it also does pair really well with food. The thing to remember, though, about Doppelbocks and Troegs Troganator is they are not light, even though they're lagers. This one clocks in at 8.2%.
Oh, so you can't
it's
quite
highly
do
caloric
as many of these.
And very alcoholic. So it's tasty and nice, but be careful.
And good for the winter.
Drink it with caution.
Like you said. I do have to report, I was so excited. I found for the first time a gluten-free coffee stout, which I remember we talked a little bit. Like I was not able to have a coffee stout for, well, as long as I was diagnosed with gluten intolerance.
Yeah.
And I was at Bevmo looking for the writer's tiers. And I happened to cross that, and I was like,
"Have you found it? Did you find Writer's Tiers?"
I was hoping it was it was at the one that's in Petaluma, as opposed to having to go out of the city. But they didn't have it there, so I'm going to have to go out if I want to get it. But when I saw that, I was like, "Oh, I can have a coffee stout!" And of course, it was not comparable to an actual, real coffee stout.
Is it like when you drink a non-alcoholic beer and you're like, it's in the neighborhood, but
it was like when I have had a cup of coffee from a family member versus the cup of coffee that I make myself, where it's in the neighborhood, but it's not quite, how I really like it. But I was just happy to have one again.
Better than nothing.
Better than nothing, exactly.
Yeah.
Nice. Nice.
That's cool.
Well, it looks like we have reached the end of another episode of Windows Weekly. Paul Thurrott of Thurrott.com, thank you so much for having me hang out with you and for all of your great...
Will be missed.
Thank you. Thank you so much. I appreciate that. All of your great explanations that you've helped me out with.
I don't know if they were great, but they were...
Look, the secret is we all say things that we don't even know are true, and that's just how this all works.
True.
Yeah.
And Mary Jo Foley of All About Microsoft, thank you. I have to give you another shout out again for helping me understand Microsoft Ignite a little bit more while it was going on earlier in the week, last week. And thank you again for having me on. Yeah.
Yeah, it's been great. And I will see you in a couple weeks.
I just heard that yesterday in the staff meeting, and I was like, yes. So I'm looking forward to that.
I will bring you a Credge sticker.
Yay! I'm getting my Credge.
Can't promise the jean jacket. We didn't even get jean jackets. So.
That's all right. We're going to work on our own. It'll be fine.
All right.
Thank you so much. And of course, folks out there, if you're tuning in live, then you know that we record the show live every Wednesday at about 2 p.m. Eastern, which is 11 a.m. Pacific, 1900 UTC. You can tune in at twit.tv/live. That, of course, has all the places that we stream live, where you can watch along with us, or head to irc.twit.tv to chat with us in the chat room. If you head to twit.tv/WW, that will give you links to all of the different places you can subscribe, like Apple Podcasts, Google Podcasts. Sorry, there's no Windows Phone link there. As well as check it out on YouTube if you would like. And as the kids on YouTube say, don't forget to hit that subscribe button. But until next time, this has been Windows Weekly, and Leo Laporte will be joining you next week. Thanks, folks.